Hey everyone! You're listening to Sarika Singh on Communicate 101 Speaking Writing Tips, your podcast channel for effective communication. On this podcast, I talk to you about becoming an effective communicator in life, be it relationships, branding communication, creative writing skills, and more. I share insights on how to speak, when to speak, tips to avoid and handle those goof ups, how to pitch to clients, how to break the ice and start conversations, and everything around this topic that walks through my mind. This episode begins. One day, as I was walking to my studio, I was reminded of this really amusing story about Dr. Murali Krishnan. Now, Dr. Murali worked with the Department of Biotechnology and was a famous scientist. He was often called in universities, seminars, conferences, and so on. And wherever Dr. Murali went, he would give his signature lecture. This Dr. Murali had a chauffeur, Ram, who was his driver, assistant, and bodyguard for over 2 decades. Ram used to drive him to all his engagements, and he really admired and looked up to Dr. Murali. Whenever Dr. Murali spoke at any event, Ram would come in, sit at the back, and listen. So one day, Dr. Murali was scheduled to speak at a place where nobody had seen him before. And this was before the age of internet, so people didn't really know what Dr. Murali looked like. And Ram wanted to take an advantage of this. He had a naughty idea. He proposed a switch. "Why don't we trade places, sir?" Ram said. "I'll deliver your lecture and you sit at the back of the audience, chill, listen and enjoy. I've heard it umpteen times and I'm pretty confident that I can give it as well as you can." Ram always wanted to speak on the stage. He loved politicians and scientists and all those people who were in demand and they were clapped at when they went on the stage. He was dying to hear the loud applause for himself, just once in his life. Dr. Murali found it funny, but he was very exhausted that day, so he thought it's worth a shot. He was a bit under the weather and he didn't want his cough and cold to ruin his talk. Also, he trusted Ram. He had seen Ram mimic him way too often. And so, Dr. Murali agreed to the switch. Now, Ram, the chauffeur, did a brilliant job at giving the lecture. Dr. Murali, on the contrary, he sat at the back of the room in driver's uniform. Imagine. The audience applauded his speech. Everything went so well. All was going so well until there was a time for questions and answers right at the end. Now this part Dr. Murali and Ram had not accounted for. Oh no, Dr. Murali was freaking out now. His first question, the very first question, was highly technical. Of course, Ram was a poor 10th class, past driver. He had no idea what to say. He had only mugged up what Dr. Murali had to say and he had narrated the whole talk. But he didn't know how to answer a question. Without missing a beat, Ram said, "Oh, good question. Thank you. But truly speaking, your question is so elementary that, I'll allow my driver to answer it for you." He called his driver, the real Dr. Murali on stage. And the real Dr. Murali answered all the questions. People were zapped. They admired the duo tremendously. What a driver to be able to answer such highly technical questions. They applauded Dr. Murali for mentoring his driver. They applauded the real Ram for mentoring the real Dr. Murali. People loved it. Ram loved it. Dr. Murali loved it. So Ram's wit, his spontaneity, his "I will not quit" nature, his presence of mind, all favored him. So what I'm trying to say is we all goof up on the stage sometime. Sometime when we are speaking to public or speaking in front of public. But it is that moment that you need to handle smartly. Cover your tracks well. I think some of you here are going to remember this little incident about Dr. Murali. And I think even some are going to share it with your family or colleagues. You may not remember what all I say in this talk, but this story, this particular story might stay in your head a little bit longer than what, other things I'm going to say. Therefore, that's your tip for today. The one single tip that I tell at my every speaking engagement and which works brilliantly is start talking to your audience with a story. Engage them right at the start. Tell a story that resonates with them. Share a personal experience. Stories help you make that connection with an audience. Just like I've connected with you. I hope I have. There may be instances where you're in a queue and people are delivering their talks or pitches one by one. Now, if someone has spoken before you, you can even piggyback on the previous speaker's comments. But you need to spell out what is at stake for your listeners. Most importantly, tell the listeners what the topic has to do with them. Your story or your incident or your narrative has to be around that. Why it's valuable for them to listen to what you have to say. What's their takeaway? Keep that center stage always. Once, I was delivering a talk on persuasive writing at a school. When the students were walking into the auditorium, I displayed a strikingly controversial image on the screen. They all looked as they parked themselves. I could hear, hush hush whispers across the room. They were all quizzed. They all had something to say. Some conversation was happening in the auditorium, and I could sense it, I could hear it. They were already involved. They were already connected with me, my talk. We were already in conversation. You know what the image said? It said, 10 reasons why the principal should be fired. Speaking order, roll number wise. And they were all dreading. Who's going to be that first roll number? Who's going to tell why the principal should be fired? What are the consequences it's going to have? What is this person on the stage going to say? Who is she? What is she going to talk about? So, this compelling visual image or the provocative question formula works very well. I use it very often at the beginning of my talks. And believe you me, it's worked every single time. Try it out. Once I was in year 11 in school and I had to give a speech around the topic dictatorship. That time, incidentally or accidentally for me, I was also the house captain. And high school auditoriums, how they are, super noisy, total chaos, nobody wants to listen, everybody wants to speak. And my turn came. I realized not a single soul, none of my friends, none of my teachers, nobody was paying attention to my walking on the stage. I felt horrible. I hated it. Who likes to go on the stage to speak when no one's interested? We all want to be greeted like a celebrity, don't we? So I knew I had to do something. Guess what I did? I held the mic and I started commanding everyone rather loudly, angrily, in a firm voice. Quiet everyone! The lunch break is going to be cancelled for those who don't stop talking. Plus 3 rounds of the football field. With hands up, I added. In a few seconds, there was pin-drop silence. I smiled. No one could figure out why I was screaming first and smiling next. Did I just throw a fit? So the minute I saw I had all their attention and the room was quiet, I unveiled the secret. I screamed because I dictated them and made them quiet. I smiled because I was able to demonstrate dictatorship, the topic of my debate, in action live to my audience. I won the prize that day, and this sweet memory is forever parked in my head. Sweet story, isn't it? And it's true, no editing. I bet some of you may remember my story, share it with your kids or someone sometime. So you see, the power of stories. You have to give a story that resonates with your audience. I repeat, which your audience can connect with. It has to be relevant. It has to make sense. Stories make chains. They connect people. They connect lives, experiences. They make invisible bonds. They connect the dots, even between strangers. Try it out. all grown up hearing bedtime stories, and we love them too. Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Ugly Duckling, Hansel and Gretel, Vikram Betal, Amar Chitrakatha, Panchtantra, Mowgli, and so on, isn't it? More than these scripted stories, people like to hear about real stories. Other people's experiences, the triumphs, tragedies, everyday learnings, goof-ups, jokes that make up their lives. Telling stories gives you the credibility, and people who hear them start to engage with you. When you insert a personal interest element in your speaking, your readers warm up to you. So try starting it with a story. Remember, once your boss wanted to convince you about something and told you a story related to it? Or your mom wanted you not to go for the late night party and told her story when she made a mess when she was in school? So we tell stories to our co-workers, our peers, our children, our grown-ups, our friends all the time to persuade someone to support our project, support our opinion, sometimes to explain to an employee how he or she might improve, to inspire a team that's facing challenges. One tried and tested technique is to introduce a story or an analogy that illustrates your point. Remember my dictatorship story? Why not your audience? How is audience different? Our brains are hardwired for the narrative. Ask your children, those of you who have got kids, or your nephews and nieces, what book do they like reading, fiction or self-help books? I'm sure 99% of the kids will pick up fiction over non-fiction. Have you thought why? Self-help books are serious, boring, adult stuff, they say. Even those fiction storybooks are teaching them the same thing, but through a story. So many of them have social messages. So the kid likes the story. Even self-help books these days are full of anecdotes, and that's why they're selling very well. Let's forget about books. Some people find books boring, so this is to all of them. How many of you watch Netflix every day? I can see so many of you are already connecting with me. I know, those Netflix series are so addictive. Now, Netflix co-founder, Reed Hastings, he tells the story in most circuits. He says his company came about because he had a huge, embarrassing late fee because he did not return a VHS to a library at the right time. This was hugely embarrassing for him. Because of this, Netflix was born. So I've heard this so many times whenever, you can Google or go on YouTube for Reed Hastings and you will hear this story. From now on, you know the story. The Netflix founding story is a good one. Even though it's a fabrication, he himself says it's not a true story. It doesn't change the fact that stories work. They always work. People keep people interested. Stories keep the mystery ongoing. The audience wants to know what's the outcome because they have a gap in their knowledge. Great stories excite, entertain, and engage audience who want to know what's going to happen next. You can always sustain this audience's interest through storytelling. It gives you the time and the opportunity to showcase your arguments or whatever you want to persuade them with. Even in brand storytelling, brands do it all the time. You can show your audience a journey from point A to point B and how to go about it. In my creative writing workshops, I teach people how to use their 5 senses to make their writings more impressive. So when you're telling a story, you make them think that your idea is their idea through emotional experiences. If you're talking about coffee, make them smell the coffee beans, make them taste the coffee, make them crave for that espresso shot. Make their experience alive. Whether it's a keynote speech or a marketing pitch, you can use stories to break the ice, deliver a message, or engage an audience with emotion. emotion, emotion. Suppose my topic for public speaking today is you can overcome any fear. And suppose I start the boring way. We all have many fears and phobias. Some fear darkness, some fear spiders, some fear ghosts, aliens, snakes, and whatnot. It's natural for everyone to be afraid of something or the other. We need to acknowledge our fears first, what we do next. It might feel silly or strange or shameful to accept it, but it's a necessary first step. Even the most confident person can have a secret fear. The difference is that some people face their fears and some don't hold their fears back. Blah, blah, blah. Would you just doze off or change the channel? Of course you would. I was plain Jane boring. On the contrary, suppose I begin this way. Hear me out. Do you know that Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimming champion, he dreaded water as a kid? And do you know the one single reason why he became the world's best swimmer today? There's one reason, and he says that in all his, talks and interviews and speeches. Not because he worked hard. Many people work hard. No, not because he got the best coaching. Many people get great coaching. So then what? He may have been the greatest swimmer ever who smashed all world records, but he dreaded water as a kid. Still, he won. He stole this secret in one of his interviews, and it stayed with me. In his own words, Phelps said, "I hated losing more than I like winning. My target was only to win because I could not lose." Now, isn't this opening better? Won't some of you remember this Michael Phelps story even after my talk? Some of you might just go ahead and tell your kids or your students or your nephews and nieces when you get back home. That's the power of storytelling. Stories stay in our heads much longer because the emotional response that we generate towards them is phenomenal. A well-told story can help your audience relate to what you're saying on a personal level, on a human level. The other day, a close friend of mine was telling me how Japan, an original tea-loving nation, has become the 5th largest importer of coffee. It was a very amusing story. I loved it. I even Googled it later for more details. And this story has stayed with me, so much so that I brought it out in front of you all. You might be going on the internet after you hear me. So tell a story to your audience once, and chances are they'll remember it. And they'll remember you. They'll value their experience with you. Nike, the famous sports brand, had a famous campaign called Find Your Greatness. This campaign was created to generate buzz on social media, during the Olympics. Everybody wanted to be connected. It was super successful. You can research on Find Your Greatness campaign by Nike. A single video had more than 4 million views. It drove Nike's revenue alone by $506 million. It increased Nike's membership by 55%. You know why? There was a moral in the campaign story, but it was a story. Nike's marketing team used an inspirational message at the center of their campaign. A message which all their consumers could identify with. And the message said, if you have a body, you're indeed an athlete. So stories, yes, they build connections. Like I said, they join the dots. We've all grown up hearing bedtime stories, and we love them too. Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Ugly Duckling, Hansel, Gretel, Viktam Betal, Amar Chitrakatha, Panchtantra, Mowgli, and the list goes on, isn't it? Why do we remember them? Why do we have a connection with them? Have you ever thought? More than these scripted stories, people love to hear about real stories. What happened in whose lives? People's experiences, their triumphs, tragedies, everyday learnings, goof-ups, jokes that make up their lives. Telling stories gives you credibility. People want to engage with you, hear them. And when you insert a personal interest element in your speaking, your listeners warm up to you. So try starting with a story. Do you remember your boss wanted to convince you about something? So he was telling you a story? Or your mom wanted you not to go out for that late night party. She told a story when she made a mess when she was in school. So we tell stories to our co-workers, peers, children, everyone all the time. To inspire them, to help them improve, to explain a point to them. Another tried and tested technique to introduce a story or an analogy is one which illustrates your point. Why not your audience? How's your audience different? Our brains are hardwired for the narrative. All of you, those who have children or nephews and nieces, have you asked them what books they like to read? Fiction or self-help books? I'm sure the answer will be fiction. Have you thought why? Self-help books, they say, are serious, boring, adult stuff, they say. But the fiction, it's teaching the same thing. Sometimes teaching, a social message or giving a social message, but through a story. And kids like stories. We all love stories. Even the self-help book these days, to make their impact, are full of stories. Forget books. Some people don't like books. And I don't want to miss out on those people. So let me connect with those people who don't like books, but who watch Netflix. How many of you watch Netflix every day? I'm sure a lot of us do. And those Netflix series are so addictive. Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings, he tells this story in most circuits. So he tells this story on why Netflix was born. He had to pay a late fee, which was very embarrassing for him, for not returning a VHS tape to the library. And it was so embarrassing that Netflix was born. The Netflix founding story is a good one. And even though he himself says it's a fabrication, it doesn't change the fact that stories work. They always do. So try speaking a story. Stories keep people interested because they contain a mystery. The audience wants to know the outcome because there's a gap in their knowledge. They excite, entertain, engage audiences. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen next. So you can use this to persuade people, to showcase your arguments. You can show your audience a journey from point A to point B and how to go about it. In my creative writing workshops, I teach people how to use their 5 senses to make their writings more expressive. So when you tell an audience a story, you make them think that your idea is their idea through emotional experiences. If you're talking about coffee, make them smell the coffee beans, make them taste the coffee, make them crave for their espresso shot. Make their experience live. So whether it's a keynote speech or a marketing pitch, you can use stories to break the ice or deliver a message or engage an audience with emotion. Suppose the topic for my public speaking is you can overcome any fear. And I start the boring way. We all have many fears and phobias, some darkness, some fear spiders, some fear ghosts, aliens, snakes and whatnot. It's natural for everyone to be afraid of something or the other. We need to acknowledge our fears first. Why do we fear? It might be feeling silly or strange or shameful to accept it. But even the most confident people have a secret fear. The difference is some people face their fears and some don't hold their potential back. Blah, blah, blah. Would you just doze off or change the channel? Of course you would. I was plain boring. On the contrary, suppose I begin it this way. Do you know that Michael Phelps? Yeah, I'm talking about the Olympic swimming champion Michael Phelps. He dreaded water as a kid. Can you believe it? But do you know the one reason which he himself says why he's the best swimmer in the world today? There's only one reason. No, not because he worked hard. A lot of people work hard. No, not because he got the best coaching. Many people get great coaching. So then what? He himself says in one of his interviews, and this has stayed with me. In his own words, Phelps said, "I hate losing more than I like winning. So I swim to not lose." Isn't this opening better? Isn't this story going to stay in your head? Aren't some of you going to go back and tell your kids this story? A well-told story can help your audience relate to what you're saying on a personal level, on a human level. The other day, a close friend of mine was telling me how Japan, an originally tea-loving nation, has become the 5th largest importer of coffee. It's a very amusing story. I'm not going to narrate it here. You can Google or go on the internet for more details. But this story has stayed with me. So much so that I brought it out in front of you all. So tell your story to your audience. Remember, they will remember you because they value the experience with you because of the story that you narrate. An interesting story. So brands use stories all the time. Brand storytelling is full of stories. Nike, the famous sports brand, had a brilliant campaign called Find Your Greatness. It created a buzz on social media during the Olympics. It was super successful. More than 4 million views. Drove Nike's revenue by 506 million. Increased their membership by 55%. You know why? It was the story. The moral of the campaign story. Nike's marketing team, they used an inspirational message at the center of their campaign. One that their consumers could identify with. A message said, if you have a body, you're indeed an athlete. So Nike's story was sold. People bought the story. They connected with the story. Do you know the one thing that's common between a good writer and a good public speaker? True. They're both good at storytelling. You want to flip the page of the book or you want to watch the next Netflix series episode. So you want to know more. What happened in the story. Try to alleviate people's anxiety with laughter. When you're telling a story, narrate a happy story. At least try to. I mean, it depends on your topic, but humor is the salt of any public speaking session. So keep your audiences engaged. People crave laughter, helps them reduce stress and stay engaged. In my years of conducting sessions and workshops and communication skills, the one thing I've found common is audience feeds on your energy as a speaker. So load yourself with the energy when you tell that story. Make it a memorable experience for them. Some of my classes, in a new class, when people don't know what my class is all about, because my classes are full of games and fun and effortless energy, so they learn everything effortlessly. There are often some people who are shy, withdrawn members in the beginning. So I have to be the spark plug. And once I have ignited their enthusiasm, then they roll. I always talk about science in my communication skill workshops. So yes, there's science here also in what I'm speaking today, in the idea why stories work in public speaking scenario. So when you hear a story, you connect with the characters in the story. And when you connect, your brain releases a chemical called oxytocin, often called the bonding or the love hormone. You feel happy. So I'm only trying to make your audiences happy and relax. I'm making a bond with you. I'm making your oxytocin flow. So when you speak to an audience, let their oxytocin flow. Personal narratives are powerful, but so many people come and say, where do I go story hunting? I don't even know so many people. I don't know so many stories. Where do I find right stories? Wikipedia? Google? Library? You don't have to go anywhere online, trust me, to find a good story. Just strike a conversation with people in your everyday life. An elevator, for example, is a great place to converse with a stranger. You're in a confined space and mostly in a comfortable space to engage in a conversation. So, you don't want to be impolite or ignore the person. So you smile, ask a harmless question. So whether it's a metro tube ride, an elevator, you might just get your energy boost for the day. Engage in a conversation. And a trick to remember that story, whatever happened that day or whatever somebody said, is to either tell it to a few people that day or write it down. Once you've told it to a few people, it's etched in your memory, and your brain's RAM knows exactly when to extract that story file to suit your talk, your speech, your presentation, your keynote, your podcast. On that note, I'll let you roll these stories that I've shared about Dr. Murli, Michael Phelps, my dictatorship speech, Netflix, the elevator, the metro tube ride in your head and smile. The next part of Public Speaking 101 is coming next Friday, so I love it if you set a reminder on your calendar. I look forward to chatting with you and your comments and sharing the next practical tip from my public speaking workshops just for you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Communicate 101 Speaking Writing Tips with Sarika Singh. If you want to be notified of upcoming episodes, be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow the podcast. I'll be back to share more stories, more life experiences, and more communication tips every Friday. If you want to reach me or connect with me, just put your comments in the comment box below or mail me at info@sarikasingh.in. I know you're going to rate and review this podcast, so a big thank you in advance. Stay tuned and think about what we talked today.